Life is going well, but my wife suddenly proposed a divorce with a resolute attitude. Lu Huai'an was puzzled and even angry. He raised a large family on a few acres of land, and also provided care for his parents. No one could say a word of difference. Why is she so dissatisfied? If he could start over, he wouldn't listen to the old man and stay in the village. He wouldn't make much money with his face to the yellow soil and back to the sky. His eldest daughter won't marry far away, and he gets angry when he thinks about her bad son-in-law in the middle of the night. My second daughter has to pay for a university anyway, and after graduating from junior high school, she can't even find a job. If the youngest daughter wants to go abroad, she can go abroad to avoid constantly digging up old accounts and saying that she has missed her whole life. The important thing is that he definitely won't marry this woman. He needs to find someone who is well-behaved, obedient, and beautiful. As a result, one's eyes were wide open. He returned to his wedding day. ADS/daily/Shuangwen, keywords of the novel. Returning to the 80s without pop-ups, downloading the full text of the 80s, and reading the latest chapters of the 80s. Chapter 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Life is going well, but my wife suddenly proposed a divorce with a resolute attitude. The three daughters all rushed back from out of town, and even coaxing and persuading were useless. Lu Huai'an was very puzzled, even angry. Listening to my wife rummaging through old accounts, going back and forth is nothing more than the hardships and sins she has endured before. He raised his voice to silence her, but his daughters turned around and called him. Everyone in the family was there, and the ignorant granddaughter widened her eyes as she listened. Lu Huai'an's old face became fiery, and she waved her hand in anger and embarrassment, saying, "Stop shouting. Just leave." The words were spoken, but I tossed and turned at night and couldn't fall asleep. "Are you really leaving?" My daughter coaxed people to the guest room to persuade them, her voice intermittent. Lu Huai'an dug out a bottle of wine, which he had not consumed for several years due to high blood pressure. He drank most of the bottle in one breath. After quitting smoking for over 10 years, I suddenly wanted to smoke a cigarette. I remember there was a yellow crane tower in the cabinet, which was given by my second son-in-law last year. Walking out with a stumbling gait, I accidentally stumbled to the threshold and fell heavily to the ground. My first thought before I died was, last time my wife tripped over the threshold, did it hurt so much? As soon as I opened my eyes, I found myself standing on the edge of the mountain. The mountain wind is chilly, the jungle beneath is lush, and the sun and moon are hidden in the depths. Lu Huai'an was startled and quickly retreated. Huai'an is scared. Someone laughed heartily and patted him. That's the end of the game. You have to come here a few times a year to get married this time. You have to endure it. His father was smoking a dry tobacco stick and clicking, "This kid." Lu Huai calmed down and glanced around. Accompanying him were his brother, father, and uncle, all sweating profusely. They stood in this cool place to take a breath, with a bag of rice and 2 baskets placed next to them, stuffed with 2 chickens and a few bundles of cloth. Lu Huai'an closed his eyes and suddenly understood what was happening right now. October 3, 1980. On the 25th day of the 8th lunar month. A good day for his marriage. Lu Huai'an remembered what his great-grandson had once talked about rebirth and pinched himself. Hiss, it hurts so much. I didn't expect him to experience a new trend. Okay, it's good to come back, so you don't have to get divorced. Divorce. I must divorce. I can't live these days anymore. Words still lingered in his ears, and Lu Huai'an's hand, wiping sweat, stopped in mid-air. How about not ending it? Anyway, we still have to leave in the end. But looking at everyone, especially his father. His father passed away for several years, and before he died, he was already very thin. But now he is still fine, beaming with joy, saying that his son must have a few more drinks when he gets married today. Lu Huai'an opened his mouth and sighed in his heart. Forget it, it's not suitable to say it now. Let's pick a place that's empty later and talk to his dad about it. Taking a breath, while it was still early, everyone lifted their things and continued down. At the entrance of the Shen family, Lu Huai'an almost passed by. He had forgotten about the old wooden house of the Shen family. They had only been married for a few years when the house collapsed. Later, the whole family moved to the foot of the mountain and built a bungalow. Watching the father in-law greet him with a happy expression on his face, Lu Huai'an felt a bit uncomfortable. Because I haven't been married for many years, my father-in-law hasn't given me a good face and looks dissatisfied everywhere. He couldn't help but think. Why is it that someone who is doing well right now suddenly changes their face? Before he could figure it out, a group of people crowded around him as he entered. The liveliness is lively, but he is too poor to even get out of the smoky black room. Suppressing discomfort, he was pushed into the room on the left. Just lifting his eyes, Lu Huai'an froze. Everything around faded away like a tide, except for that bright color that lit up the entire room. That is the bride's eyebrows and corners, with a winding blush. Her long hair was coiled behind her head, and she was dressed in a bright red new outfit, sitting shyly on the edge of the bed with a drooping face. Fingers clenched around the corner of his clothes, constantly twisting. Hearing the commotion, he couldn't help but secretly look up at him. My face is pink and white, my eyes are bright, and my slightly pursed lips look like peach blossoms blooming in early March. Is this Shenruyan? Lu Huai'an couldn't believe it. He carefully recalled that when she was young, Shenruyan seemed to always have messy hair, wearing a tattered cotton jacket, sitting on the doorstep with a haggard face while holding the child, lifeless and lifeless. The bride at present is delicate and pretty, just young. He was stunned. If it weren't for the faint shadow of his wife in his eyes and eyebrows, he would have suspected that it was a different person. Everyone burst into laughter, pushing and shoving, and laughing at Lu Huai'an. Shenruyan lowered her head with a red face and refused to lift it again. Lu Huai'an regained his composure and withdrew his gaze, his expression naturally cooperating with the invitation to go out and greet everyone. The chicken and rice brought were left behind, and a few feet of cloth was stuffed into Shenruyan's bundle by her mother-in-law. They are all poor and don't have much dowry. The 2 cloths they brought back are even packed in boxes. My mother-in-law didn't know how to conceal it, but when Lu Huai'an saw it, he remained silent, except that his father's face had changed. While using the restroom, Lu Huai'an approached his father and said, "Dad, anyway, you also have thoughts in your heart. I mean, this marriage. Why don't we just not get married? What kind of nonsense are you talking about?" His father widened his eyes and was so angry that his eyes were filled with smoke. "No nuts. Your mother has already said that if it doesn't work out this time, you'll have to be single. Don't even think about how old you are. If we can't afford to eat here, can we get this little girl back to you as an old lady? Beautiful you." "What?" Lu Huai'an also widened his eyes and suddenly remembered the words he often talked about. "If it weren't for me marrying you back then, you would have starved to death long ago. I could have married someone with money and land in my family, but only because I married you." He suddenly remembered that his family had a large population and not much money. They got married early in the countryside, and he was only in his teens when someone started matchmaking. When they heard about his brothers, they didn't even talk further, and it took several years for someone to introduce the Shen family. The 2 families are far apart. If it weren't for the poor Shen family, he wouldn't have been able to marry Shenruyan. It's because he can't hold his face, so he tried to cover up typing and use these words to block others' mouths. Why did he forget to say it himself? Out in a daze, someone enthusiastically stuffed a cake and said, "Let's eat. We'll have to leave later." A door panel was placed on the table to brew some tea, with cakes placed next to it. Everyone ate one and had a cup of tea, even if it was breakfast. The guarantor said flattery, and the eldest uncle carried Shenruyan out on his back. They need to hurry up and cross 2 mountains back to Lujia village. Lu Huai'an's whole brain was pondering, is this really his wife? Is he really going to marry her again? What should she do if she keeps clamoring for a divorce in a few decades? When he starts climbing the mountain, he doesn't have time to think too much. Later on, life was good, and he took cars in and out. He didn't even walk much. He has been comfortable for many years, but suddenly climbing a mountain made him feel anxious. The burden is not heavy, but it definitely cannot be given to Shenruyan, it can only be carried by him. After finally climbing a mountain, I didn't have time to catch my breath and had to continue climbing a second, higher mountain. When standing halfway up the mountain to catch his breath, to be honest, his legs were weak. Huai'an, what's wrong with you? Should I take you on my back? I slapped him behind the back, almost knocking Lu Huai'an down. This is really his good brother. Lu Huai'an slapped him back and said, rolling calf. Shenruyan, who was following him, trembled for a moment. He instinctively withdrew his hand and his voice softened a bit. Cough, hurry up and crawl. Yo, the groom is in a hurry, everyone is coming and going. Hurry up and go back to the village bridal chamber. A group of people were laughing and laughing, while Shenruyan covered her face and hid behind him. Lu Huai'an, who had never seen anything before, elbowed over and said, "You kid, next time you get married, I won't disturb you." "Oh, I'm so scared." Laughing and making noise, climbing the mountain doesn't seem as tiring anymore. When we arrived at Lujia village, we could see from a distance that the old house was bustling with people. But Lu Huai is settling down. He doesn't live here. Isn't his house located at the entrance of the village? Looking up, his 3-story tall building is still overgrown with weeds and a wasteland. My heart suddenly cooled halfway. Newcomers and new books, please provide more support, collect and recommend. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Old cows gnawing on tender grass. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Old cows gnawing on tender grass. When he arrived at the new house, Lu Huai'an's face turned even darker into coal. How could all 4 bedrooms at home be enough to accommodate him, and he has been living in a side bedroom all along? How could he be arranged in this side room? Did he remember wrong? What's wrong? His father glanced at him and coughed. Your mother said you guys should stay and move back to that house in a while. Lu Huai'an thought for a moment, as if they had moved back to that room after Shenruyan became pregnant, because this side room was leaking water. But he was still unwilling to change to any good house. He didn't even want to live in this old house, let alone the side house that was originally used for raising pigs, which smelled like a piece of cake. Shenruyan knew nothing and sat in happily, her small face unable to resist a smile. Stupid. It's been too long since I returned to my old house, and Lu Huai'an feels that everything is inconvenient. His mother didn't know where he was. The hall was clean and there was nothing in it. Their mother-in-law didn't know where to sit. A group of people crowded in the corner, holding teacups and looking puzzled. Lu Huai'an felt anxious as he watched them feel uneasy. They were all good, just too honest. He grabbed the little brother running around and shouted, "Where's the chair?" The younger brother startled and turned around to see him. He smiled and said, "Mom moved her house and said there were many people here and chairs were blocking the way. Go, move over." Lu Huai settled down for a moment and caught him again. "Forget it, I'll go with you." The door was tightly closed, but when she pushed it in, Zhao Xuelan, who couldn't be found anywhere, lay in bed with a pale face and a weak breath. "Mom, what's wrong with you?" Lu Huai'an was filial and was startled at the sight. Zhao Xuelan closed her eyes and snorted a headache, feeling uncomfortable and dying. "Go, call." Lu Huai'an instinctively wanted to call a doctor over to see him, but couldn't remember what the doctor's name was for a moment. Forget it, just go to the hospital and call Dad over. Don't go to the hospital. Zhao Xuelan sat up with her eyes wide open, and turned back when she saw his shocked face. I'll just lie down and not spend this money. Lu Huai'an looked at her for a few seconds and suddenly remembered what Shen Ruyun had been saying later. Your mother pretends. She loves to pretend. She's in good health, and she's already in her 70s and 80s jumping around. Just believe her lies. Yes. When he died, his mother didn't die. He was in good health and could eat 2 bowls of rice at a time. Are you really pretending? There was a lot of noise outside, and Lu Huai'an remembered the group of people who were still standing foolishly. He decided to talk later and picked up a few chairs to walk out. His brother also carried a chair with him, and finally his mother sat up again. Where to move it? Why? Standing at the door, Lu Huai'an finally understood. His mother's face was smeared with something, and his chin rubbed a large piece of white on the quilt. As soon as he sat up, the powder puff fell down. For a moment, he couldn't express what he felt in his heart. I didn't say anything and just dragged the chair away. My mother-in-law and I finally had some space to sit down, holding tea in their hands and looking cramped. Lu Huai'an bent over and dragged a stool, scooped up a bowl of fried peanuts and said, Mom and Dad, you guys eat it first. When we eat later, I'll go out and take a look. Oh, good, good, good. My mother-in-law was happy. Caught his father in the kitchen, Lu Huai'an ignored his doubts and pushed him directly to the main room, saying, My father just made tea. Come and chat with you. Oh, good, good. The father-in-law also smiled. Seeing his father accompanying guests, the uncles also had a reason to join, eating peanuts and drinking tea, and for a while, the main hall was lively. Lunch is at least a main meal, but there really aren't many dishes. After only setting up 3 tables, Lu Huai'an couldn't help but think of his granddaughter, who had already prepared 30 tables for a full moon banquet. The food was not very good either, so Lu Huai'an casually took a few bites and started toasting. Shen Ruyun also came out and toasted with him. When he walked up to his father's side, he grabbed him and said, Tell your wife to shout out your mother. You still need to have a drink. I'm not available. Lu Huai'an smiled and said, Dad, why don't you go? I'm offering a toast. When Zhao Xuelan came out, the couple happened to be paying homage to their mother-in-law. This meeting doesn't require much attention. A toast, a change of mouth, even if you're married. They even took several years to obtain their marriage certificate because they are not yet of age. Thinking of this, Lu Huai'an suddenly froze. Shen Ruyun is only 17 years old now, hasn't she turned 18 yet? Looking at her delicate face, Lu Huai'an deeply despised himself. But on second thought, it seems like I'm only 19. Okay, it's all old cows gnawing on tender grass, let's not talk about anyone. I couldn't help but smile as I remembered that I was still a tender grass. Turning around, I saw his mother sitting on the table with a drooping face. The powder on my face has been washed clean, but my nose is not my nose and my eyes are not my eyes. So Lu Huai'an knew that she was going to make trouble again. Every time she looks like this, she just makes a fuss. Lu Huai'an simply turned the cup and said to his father, Dad, Mom, I toast you. Before his mother could speak, his father drank a little too much and nodded happily, Hey, okay, drink, drink. The toast was over before his mother reacted. Sitting with Shen Ruyun, Lu Huai'an filled her with a bowl full of rice and said, Hurry up and eat. Looking at the white rice in the bowl, Shen Ruyun sat restlessly. The Shen family is so poor that they rarely have a meal. Most of it is corn flour and sweet potatoes, and only during the Chinese New Year can some rice be added. Shen Ruyun didn't dare to look up and tugged at the corner of Lu Huai'an's clothes, saying, Could it be too much? Many. Lu Huai'an looked at her in surprise. This is only a little. She doesn't have to eat 2 or 3 bowls every meal, saying she used to never have enough to eat. Not much. He glanced at her slender wrist and pinched a piece of meat for her. Eat it, there won't be enough more. This is really relaxing to eat. Looking at her bulging cheeks, Lu Huai'an muttered to himself, let's eat, let's not talk about not having enough food for you in the future. After finishing their meal, the villagers each brought their bowls, tables, and chairs back. This time, there are very few tables, chairs, bowls, and chopsticks for drinking. Everyone borrowed them and took them back when they finished eating. Shenruyan sat back in the room, with her mother-in-law and aunt talking to her inside. When Lu Huai'an came out, he heard his mother-in-law say that Shenruyan had married and enjoyed a good life. Enjoying happiness. How do you feel like suffering? Lu Huai'an sneered in his heart. The white and tender little daughter-in-law at present would become a yellow-faced woman in 2 years, and he didn't know what kind of fortune she was enjoying. Thinking about Shenruyan's face in his heart, he really doesn't understand. Even though the Shen family was even poorer, how could she mess around with herself in his house like she did later? I don't remember most of what happened back then, but now I can take a good look at it, so that she won't have to dig up old accounts in the future. He forgot everything and didn't even have room to retaliate. The house is small. Fortunately, there are many brothers and sisters, so there are many beds. My mother-in-law and her family huddle together for a night, so they don't have to go to other people's houses to stay. Rice is also leftover food, and no one says anything bad. Lu Huai'an was actually quite worried in his heart, occasionally glancing at his father-in-law. Strangely enough, the father-in-law never expressed any dissatisfaction from beginning to end, but instead praised him for his intelligence and achievements. It seems that it's not because the food is not good that I'm tired of him. After delivering things to relatives, Lu Huai'an returned to the room amidst the teasing eyes of everyone. He didn't realize it until he got into the room. By the way, they are newlywed and will definitely live together. But when Lu Huai'an looked at Shenruyan's face, he knew it was his wife, but he really couldn't take action. This is too small. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Marriage After Separation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Marriage After Separation. After hesitating for a moment, Lu Huai'an decided to take a shower and said, "Did you take a shower?" "Washed." Shenruyan's face turned red and she shrank at the foot of the bed in embarrassment. Lu Huai'an pretended to be calm and turned his face away. He took his clothes and whispered, "You're too young now, I'm not that big. You go to bed quickly. I'll talk about it later." Before Shenruyan could react, he opened the door and went out. When he returned, Shenruyan had already fallen asleep. Lu Huai'an breathed a sigh of relief, lifted the blanket, and lay down far away from her. The next morning, his mother was sweeping the floor with a broom, sweeping and flushing, loudly talking about the dirt on the floor. Lu Huai'an stood up and took the broom from her hand, saying, "All right, Mom, I'll just sweep it." "Where's your wife?" Zhao Xuelan widened her eyes and said angrily, "It's so late. It's only 5 o'clock. Lu Huai'an pushed her directly into the kitchen and yawned, "I'm hungry, Mom. You should cook quickly. Dad will get up later." After sweeping the floor, everyone got up. Due to everyone being around, Zhao Xuelan didn't say anything more. After all, after having breakfast, the father-in-law and his family are about to leave. When drinking tea, Lu Huai'an remembered that they should have given something for someone to bring back. But his mother is still sulking, and he is just not moving. He didn't go to coax either. He was deceived by her for a lifetime, and he felt ashamed when he remembered how old he was to coax her. At that time, Shenruyan must have looked at him like a joke, right? Look at him like a fool, circling around his mother. Lu Huai'an went straight into the house, took a cloth bag to put some peanuts, and made some rice and salted fish. Lu Baogua happened to come in and was startled to see him. "What are you doing?" "Mon doesn't have time to do this, I can only pretend not to do it myself." "Oh." Lu Baogua came in to get some tobacco. Seeing that he couldn't fit the salted fish, he opened the drawer and gave a bag of white sugar. "Take a bag of sugar, your uncle gave it," he said. Lu Huai'an let out a cry and stuffed it in too. As usual, the mother-in-law and the others declined, but Lu Huai'an simply put them in his arms and said, "It's necessary. Lest your daughter dig up old accounts and say she hasn't given them anything after 30 years, and send them back like beggars." Finally, his father smoked a cigarette stick and advised with a smile, and only then did his father-in-law accept it. Shenruyun followed her to the foot of the mountain, but couldn't deliver any more, so she followed her back. Her eyes were red, and Lu Huai'an looked at her feeling quite pitiful. He sighed and said, "It's okay. We're not going back the day after tomorrow, we can see each other." Shenruyun shyly glanced at him and nodded obediently, After Lu Huai'an finished speaking, he felt a sore leg. "Yes, I have to go back and climb the mountain again. But fortunately, I can at least rest for a few days." When he returned home and looked at his mother's black face, he knew it was not over. Zhao Xuelan sat at the door with a drooping face, pointing the way and saying, "Ruyana, this floor hasn't been cleaned thoroughly. You can clean it up later. I just looked at your room, and it's dirty. You can use a cloth to wipe it off, as well as the kitchen pot." Lu Huai'an looked at her non-stop mouth and suddenly doubted his own ears. He tried to recall, did this happen when he got married? Oh, at that time he was drunk. The next day, he hurriedly saw off his father-in-law's family and fell asleep, sleeping until it was dark. When Shenruyun called him, he even said he was very tired after a busy day. "So, have these things happened before?" Seeing Shenruyun with tears in her eyes, she began to sweep the floor with a broom. His mother was still ordering to remove the sheets to wash her. Lu Huai'an suddenly died. He had seen all the days she had been through, but he had never taken them to heart. The eldest daughter is right, she should have left long ago. I only scanned in the morning, there's no need to scan. Lu Huai'an calmly walked over, took the broom, and lifted his chin. The clothes I wore yesterday were washed and not dried, so I put them under the eaves. Go and take them out for me to dry. Shenruyun stiffened her hands and dared not move. I have to sweep. His mother jumped up, slapped her thigh and scolded. I just got married and forgot my mother. Ouch, my headache is very bad. The younger brothers and sisters who will help her curse in the future are still young and dare not speak, hiding behind the door and timidly watching them. Mom. Lu Huai'an looked up at her, seriously trying to distinguish her from the kind expression in his memory. I just got married yesterday, and you're making such a fuss today. Are you trying to let people know that marrying me won't come to a good end? What are you being so careless? Zhao Xuelan became anxious when she heard this. Last night, Lu Baogua said that he wanted to withdraw from the marriage on the spot, and when she remembered it, her heart was flustered. A woman must do something to get her back. Can't you still make her a young lady? Lu Huai'an looked at Shenruyun's flushed face and pushed her into the room, saying, Go, bring back my clothes to dry. Then he threw the broom to his younger brother and pushed his mother through the door. Mom, come in and say. Nowadays, most of Zhao Xuelan's moves are what he has seen before, and her acting skills are not as superb as before. I've seen it a lot, but it's actually just like that. Lu Huai'an didn't answer and just watched her act. In the end, Leng Buting said, if it's really not possible, I'll leave and marry another one, which scared Zhao Xuelan into silence for a long time. What? Zhao Xuelan hesitated for a while and said awkwardly, Shenruyun is pretty good, at least it's cheap. Don't fuss about it. There's no money at home to buy you another wife. Not to mention it's so cheap. After hearing this, Lu Huai'an remained silent for a while before finally sighing and saying, "You know it's not easy to get married, so don't mess around." Glancing at him, Zhao Xuelan couldn't help but say, "I'm not thinking of pinching it, otherwise I'll have to climb on my head. If you don't want to, forget it." Lu Huai'an was taken aback for a moment and suddenly smiled. Yes, at this time, his mother is still young, and there are not so many excuses. What is said for his good is to teach Shen Ruiyun how to be a good wife and take care of him. In fact, after all, it is still for her own benefit. When she went out, Shen Ruiyun was drying clothes. There are only 2 clothes in total, and no matter how much she dawdles, she won't be able to turn into a flower. Lu Huai'an looked a bit amused and called out to her, "Come in." With some unease, Shen Ruiyun followed in and tentatively said, "Mom." What did she say? When I think of the tasks I said, if I really want to do them, I'm afraid I won't even have time to catch my breath after a whole day. She was teasing you just now. You just got married and wouldn't do that. Lu Huai'an smiled and comforted, "Just tidy up our room when you have time. It's winter soon and there's nothing to do." Subconsciously, he doesn't want to say things too thoroughly. It's better to stop when his mother sees fit. Shen Ruiyun doesn't know anything. The world is at peace. Shen Ruiyun breathed a sigh of relief and a smile appeared on her face. "Okay." She giggled, and after looking for 2 seconds, Lu Huai'an naturally averted his gaze and said, "You tidy up, I'll go out." He went to that wasteland. Crouching on the field stem, he thought for a long time. He can't stay in the village for long, he has to go out and earn money. Once the epic of history begins, every page is brand new. The reform and opening up is coming soon, and he has to catch this train. After thinking it through, Lu Huai'an stood up, patted the dust off his body, and went to find the village chief. First of all, he needs to handle the work division well. The village chief is a friend of his father's, and upon hearing his intentions, he couldn't help but be surprised. "Do you want to use the money to offset your work points?" "Yes, Uncle Zhou." At this point, the focus on job responsibilities is no longer as tight as before, and there is no need to work every day. As long as the monthly job requirements are met, everyone will turn a blind eye. "Well, Huai'an," Zhou Zhishu frowned and pondered, holding an enamel cup. "This is not about money. Does your father agree to this?" Lu Huai'an shook his head and smiled bitterly, "I haven't told him yet." "You know, his father wouldn't agree." "Look at you, child." Zhou Zhishu's eyebrows and eyes relaxed as he patted his shoulder and smiled, "We still need to discuss this big matter with your father. As long as your father agrees, it's not a problem on my end." Originally, it was just a matter of 1 sentence. The villagers are all poor, and the work on the team is not tiring. If they can earn an extra penny, there are many people competing to do it. With this accurate sentence, Lu Huai'an stood up contentedly to bid farewell. When waiting for dinner in the evening, Lu Huai'an calmly dropped a bomb and said, "Mom, I contacted Uncle Zhou today, and I won't be working in the future. No need to work overtime." The whole family's eyes lit up. Seeking collection, seeking recommendation. P.S. Work points refer to the units used by agricultural production cooperatives and people's communes to calculate the workload and labor remuneration of their members. Basically, 1 work point is calculated per day and finally settled uniformly. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Making tiger skin by pulling the big flag. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Making tiger skin by pulling the big flag. The most excited thing is none other than his brother Lu Dingyuan. He looked up at Lu Huai'an and didn't even have time to eat. "Really? I don't have to go pick up cow dung in the future," he said. Lu Baogua's face sank and he shouted, "What's up with you? Let's eat your food." "What are you scolding him for? How old is he?" Zhao Xuelan felt sorry for her child. Unable to see her like this, Lu Baogua turned to look at Lu Huai'an and said, "What did you say?" "I happened to pass by today and heard Uncle Zhou talking about something." Lu Huai'an's expression relaxed as he slowly picked up the sweet potato. "When the others left, I went to find Uncle Zhou. He saw that I heard it and didn't hide it from me. He said there was new news above. Zhou Zhishu is known for his ability to write and calculate, and his words are generally believed by everyone." On the way back, Lu Huai'an figured it out and said directly that his parents definitely couldn't agree, but anyway, they respected Zhou Zhishu and wouldn't confront him face-to-face. Why didn't he pull a big flag as a tiger skin? Not only will the work division be gone later, but the battalion will also be disbanded. After a few words, Lu Huai'an summarized. Uncle Zhou said there are many opportunities outside now. He found a connection and asked someone to take his nephew out. I came together to make a deal, and he agreed to bring me along. Bring him along. Lu Baogua pondered as he couldn't even afford to eat. His nephew, he's the one who has finished elementary school. For a while, he couldn't remember the name of that person. Oh, yes, it's him, Lu Huai'an remembered clearly. It's Pure and White, the one you call a college student. This title is purely for everyone to tease him. After shouting for a long time, I don't even remember his real name. Lu Baogua couldn't help but laugh and gave him a glare, saying, "This is just a mixed name, but I don't want to go talk to anyone." "I know," Lu Huai sighed with peace of mind. Speaking of Uncle Zhou's nephew, he is really a bookworm. I only know how to read, but my mind rusts. I went out this year and said I was going to school, but I was deceived on the way and there was no news. For decades, there will be no one alive, no one dead. Poor Uncle Zhou has no children under his knee. He is just such a nephew, regretful and painful. He sighs when he meets people, and his impression is particularly profound. This can be. Lu Baogua's words fell silent, and Zhao Xuelan coughed heavily. What's wrong? Lu Huai'an instinctively put down his rice bowl and turned his head to fetch water. The moment I got up, I saw his mother's face was white and staring at his father. What is this? Before he could react, Lu Baogua sighed and said, Huai'an, theoretically speaking, you're young. It's right for you to want to go out and explore. We shouldn't have stopped you, but as you can see, there are old people and young people in our family, and you're the boss. Lu Huai'an had already thought about it before and quickly said, I've made money, and then I'll offset your wages together. It'll be easier. Their family is really poor. They live these days with a meal full of sweet potatoes, not the kind of soft and sticky ones that come later. He can't bear it anymore. I thought I was sure, but his mother snapped, no. Why? Lu Huai'an looked at her puzzled and wondered, didn't you always want me to make money? I've been nagging all my life, saying he's useless and blaming him for not making money. I don't have it. Zhao Xuelan blushed with anger, hesitated for a while, gritted her teeth and said, anyway, you can't go out. I didn't even eat any food, so I got up and left. This anger was really inexplicable. Lu Huai'an was confused and turned his face to look at his father. Dad, what's wrong with Mom? It's okay. Lu Baogua couldn't eat anymore, so he put his bowl down and picked up his tobacco. If you want to make money, follow me to learn bamboo farming, he said before. Lu Huai'an always pestered him to learn, but he never taught him. Ah. Lu Huai'an smiled and was about to say that he would meet early when he suddenly paused. Yes, he hasn't really learned it yet. When he was a beginner, it was also because he had nothing and no money to have children when he split up, that his father agreed to teach him this job, cutting bamboo to make baskets and earning some money to barely make a living. How could it have been advanced? He couldn't say what he already knew, so he simply refused, no need, this can earn a few dollars. This is a rare opportunity, and there happens to be acquaintances around. You don't have to worry about me either. Who's worried about you? Zhao Xuelan rushed in from behind the door, pointing at his nose and cursing, "I see you're married, and your wings are hard." She turned pale with anger and pointed at Shen Ruiyun, shouting, "It's just you, a fallen star. You unlucky guy. Marrying you won't be a good thing. Did you instigate him to do it all? This statement really doesn't make sense." Shen Ruiyun was angry and aggrieved, her eyes turned red, but she straightened her spine and gritted her teeth, refusing to admit defeat. Her lips trembled slightly, her voice was thin and light, but she was particularly firm. "I didn't." "It's not her business," Lu Huai'an frowned and looked puzzled. "Mom, I'm willing to go out and make money, and I'm willing to make progress. Isn't that a good thing?" "Yes, it's a good thing." Lu Baogua interrupted Zhao Xuelan, glanced at her, and smiled at Lu Huai'an. "Your mother, she just can't bear to part with you. You know, she always values you, and this is heartbreaking." He knocked on his cigarette stick at the edge of the table and squinted his eyes, saying, "It's not a small matter to go on a long journey. The cost of transportation is just a hurdle, and it's not that Dad won't help you. It's just that we've just finished our wedding and can't afford it. You can't let them pay, can you?" Zhao Xuelan instantly understood his meaning as a married couple. "I tell you, you need to use the money to offset your work points." "It's okay, but I won't pay a penny." Lu Huai'an was stunned. Seeing him being intimidated, Zhao Xuelan proudly raised her chin and said, "And your wife has to go to work. Without work, there won't be any food to eat. Let Shen Ruiyun go to work." Lu Huai'an frowned. "She's just a little old, you just don't care about things, your brain just thinks." Zhao Xuelan continued on, becoming more and more enthusiastic as she spoke. "Oh, you think you'll just leave the house with just a touch of your mouth? Do you want a set of clothes? Do you want shoes? You have to bring food and drink, right? Don't tell me to buy outside. The supply and marketing company only accepts tickets. What do you have?" After they were speechless, she finally felt relieved and gave him a sidelong glance, saying, "If you go out, you'll have a mouth. You go, do you have money? Do you have tickets? Where do you go? You don't even have the money for the train ticket, do you?" Lu Huai'an has already sorted out his family's finances. In recent years, he has been working with his father, chopping bamboo and other things, and making 10 baskets. His father gave him 10 cents, deducting what he usually spends. So far, he has just saved 1 yuan and 3 cents. 130 cents is not enough to buy 2 lollipops in the future, but now it can handle a big deal. Lu Huai'an didn't talk back, just smiled and said, "I'll save some money and go." "Hey, hurry up then, don't say I blocked your fortune." A strange aura of yin and yang. Lu Huai'an was speechless and too lazy to argue. He glanced at Shen Ruiyun and said, "Come over and collect my clothes after finishing." Shen Ruiyun, as if facing amnesty, quickly put down her bowl and stood up. She went out to collect her clothes as expected, as sincere as a little fool. "No need to collect it." Lu Huai'an pointed to the eaves and said, "Mine is all hanging here. That's my dad's." "Ah." Shen Ruiyun quickly withdrew her hand and followed him into the room. Closing the door, Shen Ruiyun hesitated to speak. Lu Huai'an smiled and sighed, "Just say whatever you want, I don't eat people." "Ah, no," Shen Ruiyun carefully glanced at him and hesitated a bit. "Where are you going?" "Go to the county." Lu Huai'an had already figured it out. "I don't know how the situation is right now. The city is too far away, and the Chinese New Year will be over in a few months. I won't go far anymore. Let's go to the county town to make some money first and wait until the year is over before saying, what's wrong?" Shen Ruiyun thought for a moment, then lowered her head and smiled, "No, you're right. Being proactive is a good thing." After receiving an accurate answer from his family, Lu Huai'an went to find Zhou Jishu the next day. "What? Zhou Jishu couldn't even react. You said, your parents promised to pay off your wages and let you go out to earn money. This is impossible. 2 daily updates, seeking favorites and recommendations 0.0, end of this chapter. Chapter 5. Return to the door. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Return to the door. Yes, Lu Huai'an poured him a cup of tea and chatted leisurely with him. Coincidentally, my younger brother is also old. This will drain my family's income when I marry him. In a few years, he will get married and I don't know what to do, so we also want to save more money as soon as possible. When it comes to this, Zhou Jishu understood. Zhou Jishu has always supported the marriage of this group of young people in the village, fearing that they would become single. He took a sip of tea and said in agreement, "Hey, yes, you're still sensible. Take a look at that immature person in my house and you'll know how to read all day long." At the beginning of these words, Lu Huai'an knew who he was talking about. College students. It's really like someone gives a pillow when he's dozing off. Lu Huai'an immediately picked up the conversation and said, "Reading is great." He showed envy in his eyes and admiration on his face. Unlike me, I don't know a few big characters. Nowadays, the country is developing rapidly, and reading is the key to success. It's the backbone of the country. Zhou Jishu was so amused that he slapped his thigh and said, "What crossbeam, are you building a house?" "That's a pillar." "Ah, yes." Lu Huai'an also smiled, "So, if you don't read, you'll make a fool of yourself." It was a great compliment, and Zhou Jishu loved to hear it the most. He was amused and insisted on keeping him for lunch. He doesn't have a good tolerance for alcohol, and he's been drinking loose again these days. After a few drinks, he vaguely agreed to let someone take Lu Huai'an with him. With his permission, Lu Huai'an returned satisfied. Shenruyan carried a small stool and sat in front of the door, rolling up her sleeves and rubbing her clothes hard. Where did this come from? Wine is rare these days, and Lu Huai'an doesn't drink much as he knows how to, but he still feels a bit dizzy when the alcohol is strong. He walked over as steadily as possible, frowning and saying, "What are you washing? Why are there so many clothes? These clothes are colorful." She didn't wash all the clothes she brought over, did she? Shenruyan stiffly lowered her head and rubbed it hard. This is what Mom gave me. It's already soaked, it won't work without washing." Lu Huai'an sighed and tugged at his collar with a bit of annoyance. "These clothes are very rough and uncomfortable." He glanced at it, but couldn't see it carefully. He shook his head and said, "Don't wash it for too long. You can just rub it up. With so much work and attention to detail, when will it take? Just fool around a bit." As he spoke, he squinted his eyes and smiled, "You're usually the best at dealing with my mom, aren't you? How could this be? Silly." He stumbled back and lay down to sleep. "When I wake up, it's time to have dinner." As a result, sitting at the table, Shenruyan surprisingly did not come. After waking up, Lu Huai'an realized something was wrong. Washing clothes. What are you looking at? Zhao Xulan put the bowl in front of him and said, "Let's serve the rice. Everyone is our ancestors, we don't do anything every day, we go out into the wild." Lu Huai'an served them a meal, didn't rush to eat, and walked straight out. "Where are you going?" Zhao Xulan tilted her eyes at him and shouted, "Sit down and eat." Shenruyan didn't come. Lu Huai'an didn't even turn his head and went out directly. Sure enough, Shenruyan was still rubbing her clothes there. The sun is almost setting, and the flat is already covered with clothes, all under the eaves. There is actually a pile in her basin. Why is she washing more and more? Lu Huai'an walked over and looked at the black water in the basin, saying, "Did Mom give you these clothes too?" Shenruyan remained silent and slowly rubbed her head down. "Get up, go eat." After taking 2 steps, Lu Huai'an didn't hear any movement. Looking back, she didn't move at all. The sunset struggled with its last bit of strength, giving her a touch of warmth, and the faint golden light outlined her thin outline. She hunched her back, a small ball. Lu Huai'an sighed and walked over to squat down. I drank too much this afternoon, so I didn't have time to tell you. Didn't I let you handle it casually? You watch. He pulled her aside, picked up a few clothes by himself, and wrung them dry with force. Whether he is dirty or not, hang him directly on the bamboo pole. In just a few minutes, there was nothing left in the basin. Shenruyan widened her eyes, tears still hanging on her face, and she wanted to laugh a bit. You. Lu Huai'an poured out the water and put the basin aside. We'll have a day off tomorrow and take you back the day after tomorrow. Don't cry, let's wipe it and go in for dinner. After hesitating for a few seconds, Shenruyan glanced inside the room and said, Mom. She'll be angry. You'll get angry even after washing her. Lu Huai'an waved his hand and gave her a hand. Don't worry, just go in and eat, don't say anything, leave it to me, okay? Is this okay seeing them come in together? Zhao Xuelan rolled her eyes. Lu Huai'an didn't look at her and handed the rice to Shenruyan after serving it. As Shenruyan took it, he glanced at his hand, which had turned white from soaking, and sighed in his heart. Yes. This is not Shenruyan who dares to lose his temper with his mother and says that if he doesn't serve her, she will not serve her. After 10 years of hard work, my daughter-in-law has to endure like before. She still has time to endure. Take her out next year and avoid these things. A meal was unusually dull, and Shenruyan was the first to finish. Lu Huai'an directly added another bowl of rice. You've been tired all afternoon, eat, Lu Huai'an said calmly. Indeed hungry, Shenruyan hesitated for a few seconds before taking the bowl and eating. Zhao Xuelan snorted heavily and put down her bowl before getting up. Scared, Shenruyan's heart skipped a beat and instinctively glanced at Lu Huai'an. It's okay, she eats fast, you eat yours. The next morning, he took her directly out of the door and went to the town to ask for the fare. When Zhao Xuelan got up, there was no one at home and she was so angry that she cursed her mother. Because she was holding her breath, when she returned home, she fell ill again. His father is absent, and his mother can't get up in bed. Lu Huai'an specifically went to check and confirmed that she was pretending, without mentioning anything else, only saying that they had left. Silent on the bed. After climbing a mountain, Shenruyan vaguely felt something was wrong. They are empty-handed. She tried hard to recall that last time her cousin came back, she seemed to have picked up a bag of rice. Lu Huai'an didn't notice her thoughts and was so tired that he gasped for breath. We'll rest and climb that mountain when we get to the street later, he said, saying it's a street, it's actually a muddy road with 2 scattered shops. Okay, Shenruyan tugged at the corner of her clothes, pondering in her heart. It's really not possible waiting on the street. Without waiting for her to speak, Lu Huai'an turned and entered the grain and oil store. Hey! Before leaving, Lu Huai'an had already thought about it and quickly bought something before leaving. When she came out, Shenruyan didn't even come to her senses. When she was halfway up the mountain to rest, she asked, did you already think about it? Ah. Lu Huai'an turned his head to look at her and quickly understood. Are you saying this? Shenruyan hummed and said, I thought. Do you think you'll come knocking without taking anything? Lu Huai'an smiled and shook his head, sighing, I dare not. After all, she holds a strong grudge. Remembering the things she was talking about, and then looking at the silly little girl in front of him, he suddenly lost his former heat when the mountain wind blew by. I didn't think that in the past few days, she did suffer a lot when she was young. This is still being greeted by him. At that time, he was young, his mind was full of play, and his temperament was also unpredictable. She must have been even more miserable than now. Thinking of this, Lu Huai'an touched her head and his voice softened a bit. Don't worry, I will make you live a good life. Seeking collection, seeking recommendation, end of this chapter. Chapter 6. Making money. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Making money. Until she returned home, Shenruyun never regained her senses. The two received a warm welcome, and their neighbors and relatives heard that their hairy-footed son-in-law had come over, so they all came over to watch the excitement. I thought Shenruyun's family, who only married after looking for a cheaper price, must also be poor, but I didn't expect to even bring rice and buy salt. They actually eat well on this mountain. If they are really hungry, they can bravely go for a wild game for 2 days, but salt is really rare. Someone took a sour glance and turned around to leave without even drinking tea. Shenruyun followed her to the kitchen to cook, and the neighboring uncle invited Lu Huai'an over for tea. In order to express his appreciation for Lu Huai'an, he also took out the chestnuts he had stored at home to entertain guests. Although it was just grilled and brought over, it was truly fragrant. The hot chestnuts were held in my hand, and my lips and teeth were filled with a fresh and sweet fragrance. Uncle, I think these chestnuts are quite delicious. How much do you still have? I want to buy some and take them home, said Lu Huai'an. Hey, if you like to take it back, then you can say, buy or not. My uncle repeatedly declined, but still couldn't resist Lu Huai'an. In the end, the deal was made at a price of 1 cent. Unexpectedly, this thing could still sell for money. My uncle was very happy and stuffed all the chestnuts he had hoarded into a rice bag to give to Lu Huai'an, which was bulging in a big bag. The conversation became lively, and my uncle specially invited them to come over for dinner tonight. For this uncle, Lu Huai'an is actually not familiar with him. After the Shen family moved to the foot of the mountain, there was less interaction. But my uncle probably took the money and felt really sorry for it. He sincerely invited me. After all, on their mountain top, this chestnut was just a bit of effort. Some people were eating it, but no one really paid to buy it. It's difficult to give up, but Lu Huai'an still agreed. As the evening passed, I found out that there were actually 2 strangers left. It doesn't look big, there's a man and a woman, and the man is still wearing glasses, very gentle. Seeing him stunned, my uncle quickly introduced with a smile, oh my, the child's teacher happened to come over to visit the house, so I left my meal. Teacher. Last name Li. I don't remember. However, they were all scholars. When Lu Huai'an remembered college students, he smiled and reached out his hand, saying, so it's Teacher Li, hello. Hello, hello. Teacher Li was surprised and quickly reached out his hand to shake hands with him. Uncle looked at them with a smile and said, speaking of which, Ruyun also knows them, right? Shenruyun. Seeing him puzzled, Teacher Li helped his glasses and smiled shyly. When Shen was studying, I was her mentor. The female teacher looked behind him and said, huh? Where's Shen? My father-in-law quickly went over and called out. Come on, sit on, it's good to be close. Just shout and you'll be there. A group of people sat down and started chatting. The young teachers were no match for Lu Huai'an, but with just a few words, they were completely defeated. Shenruyun did indeed study, but she was in a literacy class and attended 3rd grade. She needed 80% tuition fees for each semester, and her family couldn't afford it anymore, so she dropped out. It's really a pity, Teacher Li shook her head and sighed. She works very hard. What impressed me deeply about her is that she comes to school every day carrying her younger brother on her back. Yeah, the female teacher felt the same way. The most rare thing is that her grades will always be first. These things have been separated for a long time. Lu Huai'an thought that his youngest daughter was still a real college student, and 3rd grade in elementary school was nothing to him. He didn't break through either. For the sake of those chestnuts, he accompanied us to chat. Anyway, he was also idle. Just when Shenruyun came over, he keenly noticed that she had changed her clothes. Teacher Li, Teacher Chen. Shenruyan grabbed her clothes and quickly glanced at them, then lowered her head and said in a fly-like voice, "Hello, you guys." Watching her being pulled down by the teacher and chatting in a low voice, Lu Huai'an squinted her eyes. She also washed her face and tied her hair. No wonder it takes so long. Perhaps he had been watching for a while, and my uncle quickly stood up to help with the dishes. These days, teachers are particularly respected, and they have also prepared some rice wine. Although he didn't dare to advise much, Teacher Li still drank a small half-cup. Just half a cup, he's a bit overwhelmed. Actually, I came this time hoping that Shen could continue his studies. He half opened his eyes and his cheeks turned red. You are very smart and ambitious. It's really a pity to give up on your studies. The school teachers are extremely scarce now. If you can finish elementary school, you can take the exam, maybe teach first-grade students. Teacher Li. Shen's father was very anxious and didn't pay attention to his respect. He raised his voice and said, "Ruyun has already married someone." Lu Huai'an rotated his wine glass and slowly aligned Teacher Li with a certain image in his memory. He remembered. This Teacher Li, his full name should be Li Pailan. I guess it's because I really cherish my talent. I even mentioned some sour essays in front of him, with the intention of persuading Shenruyan to go back to study. At that time, he was young and immature, and his family was very poor. How could he have any spare money to support Shenruyan's education? Being said that, but unwilling to admit that he didn't have money, he decided to bite back and ask if he had taken a liking to Shenruyan, rushing forward so stubbornly. At that time, Li Pailan was both angry and angry. She twisted her face and left, while Shenruyan completely cut off her interest in studying. She never mentioned this again when she was pregnant and had children. But looking at Li Pailan at this moment, Lu Huai'an suddenly felt a little emotional. Sometimes, it has to be admitted that it is because of such people that the country's future will become so good. He put down his glass and nodded cautiously. Teacher Li is right. His grades are so good, it's a pity not to read anymore. Before Teacher Li could be happy, Father Shen had already heavily lowered his glass and said, "I've finished eating. Let's go back. The atmosphere is very stiff." Lu Huai'an naturally couldn't save face from his father. Law, and the whole family could only stand up and bid farewell. When he returned home, Shen's father arranged for Lu Huai'an to wash his face, feet, and sleep. After drinking, Lu Huai'an was also sleepy. After sleeping, he found that Shenruyan had not returned yet. He got up and went to the bathroom, feeling a bit flustered. As soon as it gets dark, the mountains are really very cautious. The wind howls, unknown insects chirp, and the thatched cottage is still built outside. Most importantly, there are no lights inside the thatched cottage. These days, lights are luxurious. Having one in the room is already very good, at least it's powered on, but the toilet is fine. Just plug a torch into the wall to save money and trouble. Lu Huai'an walked directly to the kitchen and went to get a torch first. As soon as I approached, I heard Shenruyan talking. "I know. He said he would be good to me. I can't read anymore. He's doing pretty well. His parents are also doing pretty well." Lu Huai'an didn't listen to the rest of the conversation. He went to the bathroom in the dark, forgetting even his fear. Lying back in bed, he recalled for the first time. When the child goes to school, he never gets involved in academic matters. Shenruyan tutors her on all the assignments, and sometimes she doesn't know. She even secretly looks up the dictionary, and he even jokes about her. Now think about it, how did she, who dropped out of school in 3rd grade, solve middle school problems? He didn't think of an answer to this question. The next day, the two of them walked out side by side, looking as if nothing had happened. The father-in-law still smiled and escorted them to the intersection, carefully instructing them to live a good life. Just the bright light in Shenruyan's eyes yesterday quietly extinguished at some point. Lu Huai'an didn't say it out loud. When he climbed to the mountaintop to rest, he grabbed Shenruyun. I know, our family's conditions are not good yet. The mountain wind blew, and the rising sun illuminated his face. He sincerely and earnestly promised her, I will make money. When our days get better, I will enroll you in a night school when we have the opportunity. You can still obtain a diploma, and you can also become a teacher if you want. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Own claims. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Own claims. This statement is unheard of. Shenruyun was stunned. Touching her head, Lu Huai'an smiled bitterly and said, of course, it's not yet possible. Don't tell anyone about this, I'll think of a solution slowly. Shenruyun didn't say anything at the moment, but when she arrived at her doorstep, she suddenly let out a sigh. Lu Huai'an didn't look back, but there was a hint of a smile on his lips. As a result, there was a fierce scolding in front of me, and everyone could hear the hatred in it. A plague-stricken person, did your mother-in-law's family kill chickens and cows for you? Going there will be such a success. Lu Huai'an looked up and saw his mother standing on the beam of their house throwing firewood. He quickly put the things inside and went over to help, saying, Mom, be careful, I'll do it. No need. Zhao Xuelan glared at him, obviously quite angry. You should hurry up and find Zhou Jishu. Everyone has come to their home, Ba. White-eyed wolf. Zhou Jishu. Lu Huai'an's heart skipped a beat and he wasn't angry either. His mother's temper, it's no use getting angry with her. After moving some firewood, Lu Huai'an effortlessly cleared up the matter. Originally, it was a college student who came. Zhou Jishu came to talk to him about things. Lu Huai'an washed his face and hurried to the Zhou family. As a result, the person left early and Zhou Jishu was not at home. Aunt Zhou looked at him with a smile and wiped her hands to make tea. I heard you brought your wife back home. Oh my, I went to see her that day. Your wife is really beautiful. Lu Huai'an had a cup of tea, and Zhou Jishu finally returned. As soon as he saw him, Zhou Jishu was overjoyed and said, it's a stroke of luck. They're ready to leave tomorrow and you'll go back and pack up. Ah, but you still have to pay for this ticket yourself. If you get there, Lekin will go to school. What about you? What did you think you could do? I've figured it out. Lu Huai'an put down his teacup and smiled, I'm planning to go to the construction site first and work with him for 10.5 days and a month to earn some money to come back and celebrate the Chinese New Year. Next year, I'll look for long-term work. The construction site. This job is great, it's down to earth. As long as you put in some effort, it's much better than boasting about running trains with all your mouth. Zhou Jishu's face softened a lot and he patted his shoulder, praising him all over his face. Sure, young people must not be afraid of hardship. Especially, Lu Huai'an said that after paying the fare himself, the last problem was also solved, and he immediately said to come and call him tomorrow morning. Lu Huai'an went back happily. His mother was ill again. It's Shenruyun cooking, and his father is making baskets inside the house. After tidying up a few pieces of clothes, Lu Huai'an went to the kitchen to give a hand. One night, the nose is not the nose, the eyes are not the eyes. When his father asked, Lu Huai'an also said he kept half of it. Zhou Jishu actually wanted me to give away college students. You know, he really cares about his nephew. Lu Huai'an emphasized the importance that Zhou Jishu placed on college students, while downplaying his own travel. They seem to have a small worker working on the construction site for 2 days, and once they finish it, they have nothing to do. Just 2 days. So what's wrong? Lu Huai'an shrugged and looked at his father helplessly. You know, nowadays, finding a job is difficult, and making money is not that easy. Lu Baogua smiled and brushed the bamboo strips with a bamboo knife, saying, that's not a big deal. It doesn't matter if you don't make money. When I come back, I'll teach you how to make baskets when I have time. Zhao Xuelan, who had been listening to the corner of the wall behind her, returned to her room with satisfaction. It's better not to make a penny. Even if she earns a few cents, it doesn't matter. She still doesn't know her son. There is a master with 5 hair flowers. As she passed by the kitchen, she made a few sarcastic remarks. Shen Ruyan hurriedly finished washing the dishes, and when she rushed back, Lu Huai'an had just taken a shower. I brought you some water, you should go wash it quickly. It's getting cold later. Lu Huai'an wiped his hair and prepared his luggage. Oh, Shen Ruyan prepared her clothes and glanced at him hesitantly. Are you leaving tomorrow? Lu Huai'an nodded with a smile and gave her a rough idea. To avoid going through trouble, he didn't say it carefully on her end, only said he would go home before the new year. Shen Ruyan breathed a sigh of relief, picked up her clothes and walked to the door, then stopped and turned her head. So, do you have a place to live over there? Not now, Lu Huai'an said with a smile, not worried. But I don't live for long. I'll be back in a while, and it's okay to live on the construction site. What should you do with this bag of chestnuts? She couldn't bear to eat this thing that had been stored for a long time and had been bought with money. Lu Huai'an smiled and patted the bag, saying, I'm not hiding it from you either. I'm planning to sell it. Selling. Shen Ruyan was full of doubts and couldn't believe it. Who would buy this? Can this thing sell well? Peeling for a long time, but still feeling unsatisfied with a mouthful, not to mention not being able to fill the stomach, eating too much raw food and having diarrhea. It's okay, I have my own opinion. Watching her leave with a heavy heart, Lu Huai'an suppressed a smile and sighed. In fact, she didn't say, he also knew her difficulties, but his mother's temper, he hadn't changed her for decades, and now he didn't waste his effort. When she returned, he gave her 2 cents and said, I don't have much money right now. If you're struggling at home, just buy something and hold on for a while. Just wait for me to come back. I don't want it. Shen Ruyan was very excited and pushed him, if you want to go out and work, you need to put more money on your body. I can't spend much money at home. As she spoke, she flipped open the mattress and handed him the money she had hidden. It's you, no one else is taking care of you outside. Be careful, bring more money, and don't be hungry. It's all split votes, and I don't know how long it has been saved. Seeing him not speaking, Shen Ruyan became anxious and said, this was given by my mother. I didn't refuse to give it to you first. I know. Looking at her conflicted expression, Lu Huai'an wanted to laugh, but more importantly, he felt heartbroken. How can he keep this money? It's hot in his hand. The next day, he packed his bag and went out early in the morning. It's still dark after finishing breakfast. His father got up, but his mother still lay angry. After explaining a few words, Lu Baoguo went back to sleep. Shen Ruyan followed along halfway, and after a few words of persuasion from Lu Huai'an, she agreed to go back. My mother has that temperament. Don't pay attention to her. Whatever she says, you can go back and don't say anything if you don't want to. Lu Huai'an looked at the corners of her red eyes and said helplessly, I know it's difficult for you. When I come back. It's meaningless for him to make promises about next year now, and he didn't say anything more later. I know. Shen Ruyan suppressed her tears and raised her hand towards him with a smile. I won't argue with Mom, don't worry. Lu Huai'an felt a bit reluctant, but still gritted his teeth and walked away. Carrying a bag of chestnuts, I really can't get up quickly. By the time we arrived, Zhou Jishu and Zhou Lekeng had already arrived for quite some time. What are you carrying? The man who led them into the city was a strong man, carrying a big bag and carrying 2 things in his hand. Let's just say it's okay, I can't carry it anymore. You can take it if you want, you have to carry it on the way. Zhou Jishu glared at him and introduced him, this is my brother. You can call him Uncle Qian. Uncle Qian, Lu Huai'an said awkwardly with a deliberately innocent smile, I'm afraid there won't be any place to sleep in the past. I brought a bed, blanket, and some clothes. It's not heavy, I can carry it. Anyway, he patted his clothes all over the chestnuts, so he was afraid of damaging them. Even if he put them outside, he couldn't tell what was inside. Next to him, Zhou Leking stood obediently with curious eyes. He was quite light-hearted, carrying a bag and completing the task, probably putting everything in Uncle Qian's bag. Zhou Zhishu was very reluctant and repeatedly instructed Zhou Leking, you must listen to Uncle Qian. When you arrive at school, give the introduction letter to the principal, and come back after a while of vacation. Alright, brother Zhou, I'll handle the matter. Don't worry, let's go first and catch the bus. Uncle Qian seemed accustomed to walking and didn't pay much attention. Transferring 2 trains cost 30 cents. Lu Huai'an stuffed the bag under the car seat, his gaze occasionally scanning Zhou Leking. The journey was smooth and without any mistakes. Even when transferring midway, Uncle Qian kept a close eye on him, wishing he could hold his hand throughout the journey. How did he lose it last time? Uncle Qian, if he still had contact with Zhou Zhishu, he would definitely have an impression, but he really doesn't have any memory, Lu Huai'an thought and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Given the level of importance that Zhou Zhishu places on Zhou Leking, it is feared that the 2 brothers who are so good now will turn against each other in the future. I can't bear to nag, but as soon as I got off the car, something really happened. Seeking collection, seeking recommendation, end of this chapter. Chapter 8. First Barrel of Gold. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. First Barrel of Gold. Lu Huai'an remained mentally tense all the way and was also very cautious when getting off the car. He actually doesn't have many things, and many people behind him are big and small, wishing they could carry all their belongings. So when getting off, it's also the ones with fewer things that get off first. Originally, Zhou Leking was supposed to be the first one, but Lu Huai'an stopped and said, I'll go first. Uncle Qian's face changed for a moment, and he gave him an appreciative look before grabbing Zhou Leking. That's right, let your brother Lu get off the car first, he said. Lu Huai'an got off the car carrying a bag, stood still, and then pushed the things to his feet. He turned around to look at Zhou Leking. Let's go. Uncle Qian was carrying something, and Lu Huai'an quickly went to pick it up. I'm fine. Uncle Qian gave way and pushed Zhou Leking away. Move over, there are many people here. There are indeed many people at the station, mainly mixed with good and bad, all kinds of them. Cars are also parked haphazardly, and it is common for people to crowd. 2 people looked at each other, wrapping Zhou Leking in the middle and carefully walking outside. There are too many people, and people often bump into each other. Children are crying, adults are shouting, and there are still shouts in the distance. Lu Huai'an was getting a headache from the noise, but he still tried to steer out of the station. Halfway through, suddenly, my hand was empty. There's a thief. Zhou Leking stopped and turned his head to look at a silhouette. He stole my bag. Despite being a weak scholar, I don't know where I came from, but I managed to shake off Uncle Qian and run wildly against the crowd. Ah, there's a thief. Where, oh my thing. Lu Huai'an no longer cared about his chestnuts, and he chased after them desperately. There are too many people, Uncle Qian couldn't keep up, he no longer knows. Fortunately, he remained vigilant and reacted relatively quickly, so he could barely see the back of Zhou Leking's head. But the feeling of moving forward against the crowd was really terrible. A few times he was pushed by someone's elbow, and he was so painful that he couldn't even shout out. Let's give way. He numbly drilled through various crevices. After finally catching up, I saw from afar that Zhou Leking had already crossed the street. There aren't many cars these days, so Lu Huai'an rushed over and at least caught him in front of the alley. Who? Zhou Leking's face was covered in sweat, panting heavily as he stumbled. Turning his head to see Lu Huai'an, his anxious face showed a hint of joy, pointing to the alley and shouting, "He just went in. I saw him dragging my bag." The alley is very long, with houses on both sides and dim lighting. After hesitating for a second, Lu Huai'an pushed him aside and said, "Wait a moment, I'll go in and take a look." He is not bold, but afraid that this foolish young man will rush in. Fortunately, although Zhou Lekeng was in a hurry, he was not foolish and nodded honestly to stand aside. Lu Huai'an glanced around and touched a stone. He tiptoed cautiously towards the inside. It was already noon, when the sun was at its maximum, but the two houses were too close to each other and there was no light in the alley. He stood at the corner in the dim light and looked inside. A figure stood against the wall, with Zhou Lekeng's bag at his feet and a faint light in his hand. He seemed a bit anxious and was knocking on the door. Old Gao, open the door quickly, get this guy." Lu Huai'an hesitated for only a second before turning around and leaving when he heard the sound of the door opening. Seeing him come out, Zhou Lekeng greeted him with a smile and looked around, "Brother Lu. Let's go." Without any pause, Lu Huai'an pulled him and ran. If he guessed correctly, Zhou Lekeng should have been so foolish when he plunged into the alley back then. After several years, there were no bones left. No way. Zhou Lekeng wanted to run back, "My bag. Follow me." Lu Huai'an couldn't even hold back, his anger rising from his heart. He shook his ear hard and shouted, "What bag is more important than your life?" Zhou Lekeng was stunned and dragged back by him, covering his face. After crossing the road, he remembered to rebel and said, I have a letter of introduction inside. And my book. It's just an introduction letter, just write another one. The person inside has a knife, you're not going to die." The two were arguing when Uncle Qian rushed over, followed by someone behind him. "Who let you run away?" Uncle Qian was furious and scolded Zhou Lekeng before turning to look at Lu Huai'an. "Huai'an, what's going on? Can you tell me?" Lu Huai'an glanced at the alley and briefly and awkwardly recounted the process. Upon hearing that the people inside were carrying knives, Zhou Lekeng still wanted to run inside. Uncle Qian startled him, feeling both angry and anxious, and gave him 2 hard slaps. "You're not at ease. If something happens to you, how can I explain it to your family?" As there were more people, their courage also increased. A few of them each took some things and walked together into the alley. Lu Huai'an, holding a wooden stick, followed behind Uncle Qian. Following behind him, Zhou Lekeng muttered, regretfully not catching anyone. "The alley is not too deep, and after walking for a while, I saw a closed wall. These 2 houses are staggered, with a door on the left leading to the alley on the other side." After seeing the door, Lu Huai'an clenched the stick and nodded at Uncle Qian. Uncle Qian understood clearly and threw a stone down. The lock rang open and clanged to the ground. Lu Huai'an poked the wooden door from a distance with a stick, and it creaked open. On the other side is another alley, leading to another street. People come and go, but the alley separated by a wall is very quiet. "Ah!" But Zhou Lekeng poked his head out and stumbled back in fear of something by the wall. Lu Huai'an followed and was stunned, "This is..." After confirming that there were no other people around, Uncle Qian decisively picked up the tattered newspaper hastily covering it. A shiny kitchen knife. Zhou Lekeng remembered that he had to chase into the alley before. If it weren't for Lu Huai'an's timely arrival at this moment, his face turned pale with fear. "Do you know you're scared?" Uncle Qian glared at him angrily and picked up the kitchen knife. "All right, I've already run away. Don't think about your introduction letter. I'll run again tomorrow and bring it home for you. Don't go anywhere, just stay at school, okay?" Okay. Zhou Lekeng never saw this battle before. He thought it was just a thief, but he didn't expect them to bring knives. Lu Huai'an looked at the kitchen knife and his heart sank heavily. If he didn't come along, if after glancing at Zhou Lekeng, who was only a little scared and unaware that he had already walked through the gates of hell, he sighed in his heart. Anyway, it can be considered as repaying Uncle Zhou's kindness for helping him. Uncle Qian put away his kitchen knife and decided not to leave it too much. Let's go back. Fortunately, Uncle Qian handled his affairs steadily and allowed the ticket inspector to watch everything. The person next to him was also a staff member at the station. Knowing that they had lost something, a large crowd gathered at the station. Uncle Qian went to talk and deal with them, but Lu Huai'an did not follow him. Zhou Leking came over from Uncle Qian and stuffed it into his hand, saying, "Here, eat steamed buns. These 2 buns are considered lunch." Lu Huai'an took it over and took a few bites, without even bothering to taste it. His heart was filled with bags. When he finally retrieved his bag, he immediately reached out and touched it. At that time, the situation was urgent and he didn't care too much, so he threw it away and ran away. His chestnuts also don't know how much bad, a little distressed. This is what he wants to sell for money. It can be considered his first bucket of gold. Because of the incident just now, Uncle Qian was also worried that they had left alone and decided to go to school together. Without a letter of introduction, we were temporarily unable to attend classes, but Uncle Qian was quite capable and managed to arrange the dormitory. He also stuffed Lu Huai'an into it. Lu Huai was happy, but it was also successful, saving on accommodation expenses. Coincidentally, he needs to save some money. After settling him down, Uncle Qian took Zhou Leking to see the teacher. There are also many students coming and going in and out of the dormitory building, and Lu Huai'an took a look for a while. There are many people, and their clothing can be considered exquisite. After all, students are still wealthy. He made up his mind and went back to the room to open the bag. I reached out and touched it, it felt like cutting my hand. The war was chaotic, and the crowd was stepping on and on. It was neither damaged nor easy to peel off. His heart, in an instant, cools. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. An idea in my heart. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. An idea in my heart. However, this was also inevitable. At that time, the scene was chaotic, and he casually threw it on the ground. Lu Huai'an sighed and carefully pulled out the outermost layer of clothes, only to find that they were all separated by layers of fabric. I originally thought it would be a bit dirty, but men don't need to worry about this matter. But if you really get your clothes dirty, it's still quite troublesome. Lu Huai'an poured out all the chestnuts and then took out his clothes. The cloth was so familiar that Lu Huai'an was stunned and said, Isn't this the dowry that my mother-in-law gave to Shenruyun? Lu Huai'an held this cloth with mixed emotions in his heart. Shenruyun, I don't know if she noticed the 20 cents under the bedboard. She is alone at home, sigh, I hope she doesn't be foolish and bullied again. Lu Huai'an put the cloth aside and cleared out all the chestnuts. Fortunately, most of them are still considered complete, except for a few that have been stepped on slightly. It's a pity to throw away the cleaned-up food, but it's not easy to peel off the raw food. Lu Huai'an touched it and felt very reluctant. To be honest, he couldn't bear to eat. His family was too poor, and he wanted to earn more money. He took Shenruyun out early to save her losses and anger. He collected the intact chestnuts and put the damaged ones in a separate bag. After waiting for a while, Zhou Leking indeed asked him to go for dinner. Uncle Qian has a heavy heart and can't get up his spirits while eating. Zhou Leking was actually very happy, saying that the principal agreed to let him come to class, but he had to write a new letter of introduction. That's great. Lu Huai'an also felt happy for him. I think this school is good. Is that right? Zhou Leking chuckled foolishly, with a happy expression on his face. The key is that the teachers are good. The math teacher is something I greatly admire. He spoke with great enthusiasm, while Lu Huai'an listened and looked around. The cafeteria is quite large, but there are very few dishes. The students make meals with tickets, and everyone is similar. After looking at the dishes, they were quite average, mostly boiled in water. Lu Huai'an tasted a little and didn't put enough oil in. Looking at those students again, most of them were bright and energetic, and he had a plan in his mind. Yes, nowadays, most people are at most blind, and those who are valued by their families can even go to elementary school to the death. If you really want to send someone to study hard in this junior high school department, they are mostly like Zhou Lekeng, and their family has some foundation to support them. Unfortunately, it is still strictly regulated now. If you sell things without approval, you may end up being a speculator. His chestnuts can't wait, he needs to find a way. Brother Lu, do you think my idea is good? Lu Huai'an temporarily withdrew his thoughts and nodded in approval. I think it's the best. Is that right? Ha ha ha, I'll just say it. Zhou Lekeng is satisfied. When he returned to the dormitory, he was indeed exhausted from tinkering all day. After washing up, he fell asleep on the bed. Shortly after Lu Huai'an returned from washing, someone knocked on the door. It's already this time. He stood up in confusion and opened the door. Uncle Qian. Uncle Qian glanced inside and said, "Did Lekeng sleep?" "I'm asleep." Lu Huai'an stepped aside and invited him in. Uncle Qian waved his hand and said, "I won't go in anymore. I'll come over and have a few words with you." This is quite strange. He didn't look for Zhou Lekeng, but instead came to find him. To be honest, I was also startled today. Uncle Qian tugged at the corner of his mouth, still unable to laugh. During the day, the war was chaotic, and he didn't pay too much attention. When he turned around and thought about it, Sheng was scared and broke out in a cold sweat. The years of friendship between me and Lao Zhou. If it weren't for this, he wouldn't have dared to hand over Luqing to me. Uncle Qian's hands trembled slightly as he took out a cigarette and took a puff before calming down again. Overall, thank you very much today. Actually I didn't do anything. He raised his hand and shook his head, saying, "No need to be polite. I've taken note of your situation. You came to the county to find work, haven't you? Are you settled?" Lu Huai'an shook his head and nodded again. "I have an idea in my mind, but I'm afraid I won't be able to do it for a while." Uncle Qian raised his eyebrows and chin up at him, saying, "Tell me." Zhou Lekeng started snoring on the bed, and the two of them exchanged a glance and smiled. So he walked out the door and talked for a while in the hallway. Selling chestnuts. This thing can. Uncle Qian paused halfway through the conversation. Glancing at Lu Huai'an, he coughed and said, I still have some ideas." Lu Huai couldn't hear it and laughed as he installed it. "It's a pity I just thought about it. Maybe someone likes this taste. Try it fresh, anyway, I don't have many." "That's true." Uncle Qian nodded and took a puff of smoke. "Alright, I'll go say hello to you, but it won't last long. How many days do you think this job will take?" After bowing his head for a moment of contemplation, Lu Huai'an gave a definite answer. 3 days. It's only 3 days. Uncle Qian breathed a sigh of relief. It's okay, this kid is quite sincere and doesn't speak up like a lion. Seeing that the atmosphere was good, Lu Huai's party building followed the stick and said, "Hee, Uncle Qian, this is the chestnut. I have my way of selling it, but what's going on?" Uncle Qian wanted to laugh a bit. "Can you still carve flowers?" "That's not true." Lu Huai'an rubbed his head and forced a silly smile on his face. "Yes, what I have now is still raw. I need to make a stove. Oh, this kid can really help him with his work." After putting out his cigarette, Uncle Qian patted Lu Huai'an's shoulder and said, "Okay, I'll handle this for you. It's just that I'll go back once. Lekeng, you need to help me take care of it." Lu Huai nodded calmly and said, "Thank you very much, Uncle Qian. I dare not take care of you. It's us helping each other." After receiving his precise words, Uncle Qian returned satisfied. He acted quickly and swiftly, and someone came knocking on the door the next morning. Lu Huai'an stood up and saw that it was not even dawn. "Is it Lu Huai'an?" The middle-aged man stood at the door, scrutinizing him with restraint. "Yes." Seeing him nod, the man breathed a sigh of relief and said, "It's like this. Brother Qian said you want a barbecue, and I brought it to you." "Barbecue?" Lu Huai'an felt a bit amused when he heard this. It's unlikely that there would be any mishaps, as the stove could not meet his requirements. He hastily put on a coat and followed downstairs. Fortunately, although these brothers spoke vaguely, they managed things very efficiently. "I have a complete set of shovels, pots, and stoves, and I don't know how Uncle Qian got them." After confirming with him, the man hurriedly left, saying he was going back to the cafeteria to prepare breakfast. After thinking for a moment, Lu Huai'an placed the stove in the corner and took the pot up. After washing up, he took advantage of the faint light in the sky and placed the pot containing those crushed chestnuts on the small cart. This cart is really full of manpower. It's a wooden cart, and the stove on it hasn't started yet. Lu Huai'an put in a lot of effort to push the car to the school gate, lit the stove, and it was already dawn. At this time, students in groups of 3 or 2 began to enter the school gate. Lu Huai'an calmly poured out a small half of the chestnuts from the pot, and the rest was directly placed on the stove. He processed these chestnuts yesterday, and cut a cross on the flat surface of each chestnut. Some have been fractured, so he didn't have to put in so much effort. Fire also burns dry firewood, and he deliberately didn't put too much firewood, so the fire wasn't big. With a crackling sound, the roasted chestnuts began to emit a fragrance. About 5 minutes later, passing students began to cast surprised glances. Probably because we had already said hello, but no one came to inquire. But the students came and went, but none of them came up to ask or buy. After thinking for a moment, Lu Huai'an picked up a thin wooden board from under the cart, which is usually used to hold things. Flip the chestnuts in the pot and continue frying and grilling. With the right hand holding the wooden board, slowly fan it. This one, the students, who were already very slow in pace, were completely unable to move. "What is this?" "Chestnuts. What I've eaten before is just cooked and eaten, why is it so fragrant? This is too fragrant. It must be so expensive. Speak and see, those who pay have no choice." Signed, Please Collect Please Recommend 0.0, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. Ways to Think Individually. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Ways to Think Individually. Their discussion was not heard by Lu Huai, but his movements slowed down quite a bit. The fragrance is getting stronger and stronger. Sugar is extremely luxurious these days, let alone such sweet chestnuts. Finally, someone couldn't help but step forward and ask, "How is this sold?" Lu Huai felt relieved and said with a smile, 1 cent per bag. Other things are not familiar, but this bag is quite familiar. The student looked at it and felt relieved. The cafeteria is selling chestnuts now. Why don't you sell them in the cafeteria? Come here and give me a penny. Okay, Lu Huai'an picked up a shovel and skillfully gave it a big shovel. I'm not from the cafeteria, I'll borrow a place to sell it for 2 days. These days, white sugar is a rare commodity and there are no snacks available. The colorful candies are so sweet that they are greasy, and the children are still very envious. Not to mention this pure natural wild chestnut, after being roasted at high temperatures, its fragrance is simply unbearable. No matter how fragrant it is, some people mutter, 1 cent. Are you trying to steal money? That's right, it's too expensive and not worth it. Let's go. Several people immediately left. No matter what others think, the student couldn't help but reach out to grab it and eat. Lu Huai'an quickly stopped him and said, "Wait a moment, it's hot now." Someone who didn't plan to buy immediately snorted, maybe they can't eat it. He glanced at the chestnut and raised his neck, saying, my distant relatives have given us some of these things before. The fur is dry, the meat is scarce, and it's difficult to peel. After a while, they chewed on them with fur and skin, tsk, rude. Some students who have always been particular and consider themselves different from muddy legs immediately lose their thoughts upon hearing these words. So it's just food for rural people. Lu Huai'an did not respond at all. Seeing him stir up the topic seriously and not speaking at all, the person couldn't speak anymore and walked away. Ah, it's so hot. The student who originally bought chestnuts didn't care about these things. He was really uncomfortable with the fragrance of the chestnuts, so he carefully pinched one while enduring the heat. A familiar person immediately laughed and said, Chen Yongming, don't eat a mouthful of hair ha. Regardless of whether he's hairy or not, I want to taste it anyway. I can't stand this fragrance anymore. Chen Yongming smiled and hugged the chestnut beautifully. As a result, there was no need to put in any effort to peel it, and there was no hair as they said. The chestnuts, which were roasted to the point where their skin was fried, had a golden luster on their flesh. With each squeeze of their 2 fingers, the flesh protruded on its own. Without hesitation, Chen Yongming stuffed it into his mouth, causing his tongue to slip and he couldn't bear to retract. Sweet and smooth, with a sip on the tip of your tongue, the tender chestnuts melt in your mouth. The fragrance instantly overflowed between my lips and teeth, leaving behind a crispy surface layer of chestnut flesh. Even a bite of my teeth could hear a crisp creaking sound. He had such a delicious chestnut for the first time, his expression was extremely exaggerated, and his eyes narrowed into a slit. Hey, you're too fake, right? Huh, Chen Yongming, this is your relative, right? Who are you fooling? It's like some delicious dish. Come on, give me one. Chen Yongming couldn't open his mouth and withdrew his body. Watching them arguing and getting into a mess, Lu Huai'an slapped the wooden board and laughed. Okay, this business has stabilized. Sure enough, the group of people picked up a chestnut and ate it, and immediately turned around to buy it. Although they don't have much money, a penny is really not much for students who don't need to go to school and study every day. Moreover, this quantity is sufficient. 1 cent, 1 big shovel. Give me a cent. Me too. Lu Huai'an acted swiftly and packaged the stir-fried ones one by one. This batch was stir-fried before, and I just scooped it out. Look, it's not too hot either. It's just right now, he explained while pretending. Chen Yongming leaned forward and handed over the bag, saying, I need to buy another bag. Ah, it's so delicious, I didn't even eat a few just now. After all, he was the first customer, and Lu Huai'an generously filled him with a full bag. Unfortunately, on the first day, Lu Huai'an was not sure how much he could sell, so he didn't bring much, basically all of which were crushed chestnuts. In no time, the chestnuts in the pot were sold out. Ah, I'm sorry, we're all sold out, Lu Huai'an said with a somewhat embarrassed expression as he had to put aside his hand. I have already bought delicious chestnuts, but if I haven't bought them yet, I am in a hurry. What should I do? I haven't eaten yet. That's right, why don't you bring some more over? How can this be enough to sell? Hey, it smells so good. Lu Huai'an didn't argue with them either, only apologized with a smile. After their mentality calmed down, they said leisurely, I will come back tomorrow, but I don't have too many chestnuts. Will you come back tomorrow? Chen Yongming's eyes lit up and he immediately made a decision. Okay, I'll come back tomorrow. The other classmates had already lost their confidence, but they didn't expect the road to turn and laughed. Yes, I'll buy it too. You must come. Lu Huai'an took out the firewood and turned it off while laughing. Okay, definitely come. Just as class was about to start, the students couldn't afford to eat any chestnuts and hurriedly went to class. Chen Yongming ate a bag in front of him, but after eating a few pills, he didn't eat any more. After thinking about it, he tied up the bag and prepared to take it back to his family to taste. This chestnut is so fragrant, his sister must love it. As soon as I entered, the classroom was filled with chestnut fragrance. Someone lives in school and doesn't know what happened. They stick out their nose and smell hard. It smells so good. What's going on? Chen Yongming has always been popular, and some classmates couldn't help but approach and ask. He is also quite generous and allows people to take it themselves. That's so embarrassing. Snacks are usually reluctant to buy, and when it comes to other people's things, they can't just reach out and grab them with such a big face. Most of them just take one to taste, and the aftertaste is endless. After selling chestnuts, Lu Huai'an packed his cart and was worried about where to put such a big guy. That old man came over this morning. Hey, brother Lu. He glanced into the pot and said with a smile, I heard people say we sell chestnuts here, so I came over and sold them all, right? Then I'll push the stove back. Do you still want it tomorrow? Yes, it is. Lu Huai'an took out a bag of chestnuts from below and smiled as he stuffed it into his arms. I have specially kept a bag for you. It was brought back and forth, thank you, brother. Although he said it with embarrassment, the bag man had no intention of pushing it out. With just one push, the two of them walked back together chatting side by side. Returning to the dormitory, Lu Huai'an realized that his feet were tingling. Standing for a while. He didn't bother pinching his feet and sat down on the bed, opened the money bag and poured it down. Divided tickets, corner tickets, some are still grain tickets. Not everyone carries money with them. Some say they can use other tickets to offset it, but Lu Huai'an agrees. He doesn't refuse anyone who comes, anyway he is lacking. Well, this is a grain receipt. Lu Huai'an carefully picked them up and carefully stacked them together. Finally, I earned a total of 1.6 yuan, along with some food, fuel, and distribution tickets. Put all this money away, Lu Huai'an thought for a moment and stuffed all these tickets into his pocket, wanting to go out and have a look. Chestnuts can probably sell for another day or two, not much. I can sell it for a total of 4 or 5 yuan, which is enough for this year. But this thing is hard to come by, it's too easy to replicate, and the school is now looking for Uncle Qian's face. After a few days, he won't be able to set up a stall here anymore. We still need to think of individual ways. End of this chapter.